Boy Kills World is a movie directed by Moritz Moore and starring Bill Skarsgård, and is a movie I saw this past weekend. I actually meant to see it earlier than this, but for some reason I did a coin toss between this and the Ministry of Ungentlemanly Warfare the previous weekend, and the latter won out. And my thoughts on that movie are, it was a decent, but I think I wanted a little more over-the-top action and less World War II heist film, but still, not a bad flick. Anyway, I quenched that thirst from Boy Kills World because it's an over-the-top, ultra-violent revenge action film where the titular boy is trying to enact his revenge on a totalitarian government that murdered his family when he was young, and after going through a training from hell routine over several years, ends up taking revenge into his own hands. So what I'm going to say out of the gate is that I really love this movie. For real, it's probably one of my favorite films I've seen in a minute. There's going to be a lot of glowing positivity radiating from me when I talk about this movie. I mean, I don't even know why I even decided to go see it in the first place. It wasn't on like my to-see watch list or anything. But I've been trying to expand my movie watching to stuff that isn't just quote-unquote mainstream stuff for the past few years. And I think what happened is I caught a trailer at the gym with no sound where I thought, yeah, that looks fun and violent. And yeah, it was, so I got what I expected. But what I didn't expect was also how freaking funny the movie was. I rewatched the trailers with sound on this time, so it was more obvious now, but I had no idea that this movie was also a comedy. What tipped me off early on wasn't when things started getting funny, it was when the main character's inner voice started speaking in the voice of H. John Benjamin. And you don't bring in Bob Belcher to do a serious Shakespearean-level monologue.
That's me, facing televised execution by breakfast cereal mascots. Not my happiest day.
I actually read online that Archer's addition to the cast was done later, since the original cut of the film that aired last year at Toronto International Film Festival, also known as TIFF, had Skarsgård doing his own internal narration, and I guess it wasn't well received, so they did another cut with Benjamin. And while part of me wants to see that cut just to see how bad it turned out, I do think that casting Coach McGurk was a great choice. The movie's plot isn't anything spectacular or to write home about. It's a pretty bog-standard revenge action plot, and it mostly plays out exactly how you'd expect. Boy loses family. Boy undergoes training from hell from martial arts master. Boy kills world. However, the zaniness of the fight scenes, Boy's inner monologue, and the ridiculousness to the cast of characters is where the movie shines. The film wears its video game inspiration on its sleeve despite not being based on any specific game. It also works that into the plot, as Boy's inner monologue is based on a fighting game announcer from a game he played as a kid. But also, just in general, the structure and design of the film itself feels very video gamey. Boy constantly faces hordes of faceless goons that he can tear through no problem, while occasionally having to fight more elite-type enemies that take a different strategy to take down. Then every so often he finds himself fighting against a boss-type enemy that gives him more of a run for his money. The setting is a dystopian, nondescript, neon-lit city located near jungle slums, and while clearly inspired by real-life settings, makes no effort to try and establish itself as one. The violence itself is gory, over the top, and overall just fun. It's fun violence. The kind where you see someone's head get popped like a balloon after a shotgun is pushed into their mouth, and you don't wince or feel nauseous, but instead just start laughing. I think the only time during one of these sequences when I did cringe a bit was when Boy started killing people with a cheese grater. And that sentence alone should help you visualize why I reacted that way. The film handled its action comedy balance incredibly well, which just also plays into when it knows when to pull back on that, especially at the climax. The absence of the comedic inner monologue is felt heavily at that point. All that fun violence is replaced by a brutal, unrelenting, and painful struggle. And I don't want to go too heavy into spoilers, but all I will say is that entire final fight of the movie was so memorable it's been in my head since I left the theater. If I had to give any sort of criticism to this movie, it's that I think whatever messaging it was going for got really muddled towards the end. There were some themes and character motivations that I felt got a bit jumbled in the last act. It started to hit reveal after reveal, but it wasn't enough to bring the whole film down to me. And also, while I do appreciate the video game and comic book inspirations it was clearly going for, I do wish they leaned a little more into the costume design of the villains and added more camp. I get they were going for your typical totalitarian look, but I would have liked something more, a little more out there. June 27th's helmet emotes were fun, though. Check it out if you can. I don't think this movie's doing great at the box office because I could barely find any showings for it near me. I also had an empty theater, which would have been great, but then some other guy came in at the last minute. I think some of my laughter must have annoyed him because anytime a big funny thing happened, he kind of turned a little bit and gave me one of these.